Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jackie Spear. I'm a congresswoman from the 14th Congressional District in California. And along with my colleagues, we are introducing the Am Vanessa Guillen legislation today. Let me start by thanking deeply the family of Vanessa Guillen, Roger and Gloria Guillen, and their daughters, Myra and Lupe, who have traveled all the way from Texas to be here for this introduction. Their strength and commitment to fight not just for Vanessa, but for every service member in this country who deserves a chance to serve in the military without fear of being sexually harassed or sexually assaulted from within, and who joins the military to serve their country and to fight the enemy outside of the military, not within. This particular piece of legislation is going to transform a tragedy into change. Not just ordinary change, but tectonic change. I want to thank my co-leads on this bill who are from both sides of the aisle who have joined me here this afternoon. Congress members Mullen, Garcia, Carter, Escobar, Olson, Cisneros, Balderson, Crow, and Hurd. And I thank Senator Hirano on the Senate side for introducing the companion bill there. We now have over 73 co-sponsors of this legislation. The family met with Speaker Pelosi this morning, and she has committed to bringing this legislation to the floor of the House. Am Vanessa Guillen has become a rallying cry across the country for survivors speaking out against the toxic rot in the military around harassment and sexual assault. Sexual assault and harassment that they've endured at the hands of their brothers and sisters in arms. Many have spoken out for the first time about their specific encounters with violence and indignity, not only of the abuse, but for the failure of the military to hold their assailants accountable. Vanessa told her family that she experienced sexual harassment from a superior, but did not have faith in the system to file a complaint. How could she? Over the past decade, we've thrown billions of dollars at the problem of sexual harassment and assault in the military. And yet, 120,000 service members in 2018 indicated that they had endured sexual harassment, with fewer than 1% making a formal complaint. The Pentagon's own reports tell us that sexual harassment creates a climate that makes sexual assault more likely. This culture is broken, the rot has festered for generations, and the data proves what survivors have been telling us for years. What we have been doing is not working. In 2018, 20,000 service members were sexually assaulted. Only 5,000 of them were willing to come forward and file a complaint. And of the 5,000, less than 500 of them went on to courts-martial, and only 250 were convicted. So service members fear retaliation. They fear retribution. And that's why they do not come forward. What we also know is that about 20% of the military is female, but they represent 63% of the assaults. And the victims are among the youngest and the lowest ranking women who are at risk. The voices of those survivors have never been louder or more clear. This is the military's Me Too moment. And we are going to take full advantage to amplify it and to cause the kinds of changes that we believe should take place. I started telling the stories of sexual assault victims in the military almost 10 years ago. I told 30 of their stories on the House floor. Back then, it was hardly a murmur. Back then, Democrats and Republicans alike did not recognize that this was an issue that deserved our attention. But all of that has changed. Now we recognize that we must act. So this legislation is going to create an independent system that these service members who are sexually harassed or assaulted can trust. First, it is going to make it a crime punishable in the Uniform Code of Military Justice to sexually harass. It's going to create a confidential reporting system for sexual harassment that will be integrated in the military's Catch a Sexual Serial Offender program. It's going to require that an investigation be done independently of the chain of command by trained and experienced professionals. It also is going to require that there be independent prosecutorial determination to move forward with a case. It also is going to provide the opportunity for those who are sexually harassed or assaulted to file claims within the Department of Defense for compensation. And finally, it's going to require an external review by the General Accountability Office to look at what has been the prevention program operational for the last 10 years to see what needs to be fixed, and secondly, to look at the military's procedure for investigating missing persons within the military. Finally, there will be a system that is independent, that will allow service members to come forward and trust in a system that will be independent and will fairly review their complaints. Tomorrow, a number of us are going to be on a Codell to Fort Hood. And at Fort Hood, we are going to talk to enlisted. We are going to be talking to the military police. We're going to be talking to the police in Killeen. We're going to visit the sites of those who have lost their lives at Fort Hood, specifically the crime scene and the location of the remains of Vanessa Guillen, also the location where Sergeant Elder Fernandez was located, Specialist Freddie De La Cruz, and Private Gregory Waddell Morales. It is profound to realize that nearly 30 service members have died at the base this year, including at least 9 under unusual or suspicious circumstances. September 30th would have been Vanessa Guillen's 21st birthday. Think about that. This young woman who wanted to commit her life to protecting Americans hadn't even reached the age of 21 before her life was snuffed out. The status quo is unacceptable. We're not going to tolerate it anymore. And I'm proud to be associated by all my colleagues who have joined here today. So I'd like to start by introducing Congressman Mullen as one of our co-leads.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for being here. You know, we first started working with Natalie, who represents the Guillen family, actually a couple years ago on a separate case, Richard Stayskill. And when we took on that giant, they told us that they've been trying to make changes to the military and to the way that cases are treated for over 50 years. And we were able to do something with Rich Stayskill that people said we wasn't able to do. And so when we first started visiting about Vanessa, We knew it was an uphill battle. This systemic issue that's been going on inside of DOD isn't any different than the systemic issue we have in the civilian world too. The problem is the way they treat them and the way they prosecute the crimes. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. And it wasn't getting any better. The situations wasn't improving. And it took something like a horrific death of Vanessa to bring it to the attention to everybody to say something has to change. And then it took her family that said, you know, we're not going to be silent about this. We're not going to go away. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing. And we're going to keep pushing. We're not going to allow Vanessa, the death that happened to Vanessa, to go in vain. So why she died a horrific death, and it's tragic to all of us. And visiting with the family, it breaks my heart. I mean, I'm a father of 6 kids, 3 girls and 3 boys. And I can't imagine having to be in her parents' shoes. But at least to understand that Vanessa was fighting for our country and doing what she thought was right by serving and protecting us all. If Vanessa and those that serve in uniform don't go and do their job well, then us in Congress, we can't even do our job, period. But in her death, she's going to serve her brothers and sisters in arms for years to come and protect those other men and women that may have didn't have a voice beforehand and now have a place to go. So while we move this out of the chain of command that sometimes has a tendency to protect their own, puts it where somebody that is trained in taking care of the situations, confidential reporting, and allowing it to be looked at as an independent case and seeing if they can catch individuals that could repeat this is vitally important. So I want to thank everybody for being here, my colleagues that have decided to step up and work with Congresswoman Spear and myself, and Vanessa's family for not being silent. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman Mullen. Now we will hear from Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, who is the representative for many in the family of the Guillens and who has shown great leadership on this issue.
My heart today is with my constituents, the Vanessa Guillen family, who are all here with us today. The Guillen family has endured unspeakable pain, but they have been persistent in their fight for justice over the last 5 months. And today, I want them to know that Congress, the Houston community, and the world stands with you. From the moment I became involved in this case back in May, I said I wouldn't stop fighting until we found Vanessa and until we got justice for her. The Army and Fort Hood failed her. But in her name, we make the comprehensive changes needed to stop this from ever happening again. The Am Vanessa Guillen Act of 2020 is a transformative piece of legislation that will save lives and help keep our women and men in this armed services safe. Gloria Guillen, Vanessa's mom, often says in Spanish, mi hija es historia. Ella va a salvar muchas vidas. In English, that simply says, my daughter has made history and will help save the lives of many. While we can never bring Vanessa back, today we honor her memory with this bill. I want to thank Congresswoman Spear for her leadership on this issue and her unwavering support during this process from day one. I want to thank all my colleagues who stood with me from the beginning for supporting this very important piece of legislation. I also want to thank all the countless survivors of military sexual violence for sharing their stories and making sure that this was no longer ignored. And most importantly, I want to thank the Guillen family for their commitment to justice. Thanks to you, we are one step closer to ensuring that our women and men in uniform will be safe, to report sexual violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment without fear or retaliation. I am hopeful that we will move quickly in the House and that the Senate will do the right thing to make sure that we keep our men and women in uniform safe. Enough is enough. This must never. Mi corazón están aquí con nosotros. La familia Guillen ha sufrido mucho, pero han seguido luchando por justicia durante los últimos 5 meses. Y yo quiero que sepan que el Congreso, la comunidad de Houston y todo el mundo está con ustedes. Desde mayo, cuando empecé a trabajar en este caso, siempre le dije que nunca dejaría de luchar por encontrar a Vanessa y obtener justicia para ella. El Army y Fort Hood les falló a Vanessa y a ustedes. Pero en su nombre haremos los cambios necesarios para que esto nunca pase de nuevo. La ley Yo Soy Vanessa Guillen de 2020 va a salvar vidas y va a mantener a nuestros soldados y soldadas seguros. Gloria Guillen, la mamá de Vanessa, siempre dice que mi hija es historia. Ella va a salvar muchas vidas. Hoy estamos haciendo historia. Aunque no podremos traer de regreso a Vanessa, hoy honoramos su memoria. Quiero darle las gracias a la congresista Spear por todo su apoyo. Quiero darles las gracias a todos mis colegas que están aquí con nosotros y también que estaban con nosotros del principio. Y sobre todo quiero darle las gracias a la familia Guillen. Gracias a ustedes estamos más cerca que nunca a que los soldados puedan reportar casos de acoso y abuso sexual sin tener miedo. Tengo fe que esta ley se pueda aprobar rápido en la Cámara y el que el Senado salga de acuerdo para que este proyecto sea ley para todos. Gracias por su tiempo. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Congresswoman Garcia. Now, please join me in welcoming the Guillen family, Gloria and Roger Guillen, and Myra and Lupe.
Hi everyone, and thank you for being here today. On behalf of my family and myself, and of course Vanessa, I want to thank everyone for taking their time and being here and honoring Vanessa as the hero she is. She's now an American hero that will save lots of lives, especially in the military. All the military members, both men and women, deserve to have equal rights, if not a bit more than us, because they signed their lives to protect us. And it's not fair that had to happen to Vanessa in order for everyone to pay attention. And I want to give a special thanks to Natalie and the congressmen and women that are helping us support the bill. In this case, Congresswoman Spears and also Mark Ray Mullen, that, they're our main supporters on this. And also a special thanks for Speaker Pelosi for having us today and hearing our point of view and what's going on. It wouldn't be possible without everyone here, and I just want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart. And I would appreciate if all citizens, all American citizens, everyone here in America have pick up your phone and call your congresswomen and men and tell them to support the bill, and that way we can keep honoring my sister and keep saving lives.
Thank you. Now we will hear from the attorney for the family, Natalie Kwan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today was a day that we've been waiting for, and we're honored to be here, and we appreciate everyone's support. We thank the speaker today for meeting with the family and putting the bill on the floor to get voted on. We really appreciate Congresswoman Chairwoman Jackie Spear for leading this cause. We couldn't do this without Markwayne Mullin, who's a fighter in every which way. Last year, as Markwayne Mullin mentioned, I worked on the Sergeant First Class Richard Stayskull Military Medical Accountability Act. He was my client, he's still my client, and we fought a hard fight and we won. And this year, when I got retained by the Guillen family in mid-June, 3 months later, we have a congressional investigation, we have a general down, and we have, more importantly, a bill that's getting voted on. And I consider this an incredible accomplishment, not by just us, but by everyone here that came, everybody here that was supporting us, everyone here that brought awareness to this issue. Like Congresswoman Spears said, she's been doing this for 10 years. You know, enough is enough. We didn't have to lose Vanessa. We didn't have to lose any of these soldiers. You know, they go and they sign up to fight for our country, to take a bullet for our country, not to get sexually harassed and sexually assaulted. It's unfair. It's not the place. It's sure not the time. It's 2020. And the buck stops here, everyone. Today's a new day. Today's the future of our military, and today's the future of America. And I appreciate every person that supported our cause and every person that's going to support our cause. Like Myra said, please call your congressman and your senator and tell them to vote for this bill, sponsor this bill. And shame on anyone who doesn't sponsor this bill. Shame on them. And we want them to be known. Because this bill protects our military, and we have a duty to them. They fight for us. It's time we fight for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalie Kwan. Now we'll hear from Congressman Pete Olson from Texas.
Good morning. My name is Congressman Pete Olson. I've been in Congress now for 12 years. Texas 22, neighbors of the Guillen family. I'm not happy I'm here. We're here talking about Vanessa. I wish we were talking with Vanessa. But sadly, that's not happening. And at times, I find myself damn mad about what happened to Vanessa. Y'all, many of you feel the same way. But we're here to celebrate a life of service by Vanessa Guillen, United States Army. We know that she told her mom, Gloria, in February this year that she'd been harassed at Fort Hood. She also told Mom, I'm not making any waves. If I tell my story to someone in my chain of command, I may be ridiculed, laughed at, blamed for the harassment. She disappeared on April 22nd of this year. We found her body 2 months later, June 30th of the same year. As was mentioned by my colleagues, a fellow soldier took this young lady's life because she was trying to do the right thing. We all know too, the person who killed Vanessa was not put in jail, held for any time, not confined to his quarters. He had one single guard watch him without a weapon. He got away and killed himself before he could be brought to justice. Before I was in Congress, I served 9 years active duty in our Navy. I flew what's called the Papa 3 Orion, a submarine hunter, a crew of 12. My skipper told me as a leader in the military, you should follow the 3 P's. Praise, your soldiers when they've done something good. Punish them responsibly when they've done something wrong, and protect them from harm, physical, mental, and harassment. Fort Hood dropped the ball on all 3 Ps. They did not promote Vanessa. They made her feel like she couldn't come forward with her charges of being assaulted on Fort Hood. They sure as heck did not protect her. And this bill makes sure going forward there's never, ever, ever going to be another Vanessa Guillen again. We have the best military in the world, but they've got some problems. And Gloria, because of your daughter's life, today we commit to fix these problems forever, so there's never, ever again another Vanessa Guillen. Thank you. God bless you. Let's get this past this Congress. I'm saying, Houston, failure is not an option.
Thank you, Congressman Olson. We'll now hear from a member of the Military Personnel Subcommittee and colleague, Congresswoman Escobar.
Good morning. Buenos días a la familia Guillen. Soy Verónica Escobar. Yo represento a El Paso y les quiero dar mi pésame. Como madre, ni puedo imaginar el dolor, ni lo puedo imaginar. Pero quiero decirles a ustedes que no están solos en su dolor y no están solos en su lucha. Y les quiero dar las gracias por todo lo que han hecho para elevar tantas voces. Estamos aquí por la lucha de ustedes. Gracias. I want to thank all of you all for being here. I want to thank my colleagues, most especially Congresswoman Jackie Spear, who has been a relentless voice against sexual harassment and sexual assault in the U.S. military. I want to thank my dear colleague Sylvia Garcia, who from the beginning has been a crucial and fierce voice for her constituents. And I want to thank our Republican colleagues for joining in this bipartisan effort. It is incredible that we are able to come together with a vital and critical piece of reform for all of the women and men who have been sexually harassed and assaulted in the U.S. military. As a member of the Military Personnel Subcommittee, I can tell you that I have heard countless stories from women and men who have suffered at the hands of abuse within the military. And those stories are stories that I cannot forget and will not forget until we create change. I'm going to be very, very brief because my colleagues have pretty much said it all. But it is so important that as we bring this bill to the floor, and with Speaker Pelosi's commitment to bringing it to the floor, which we are very, very grateful for, it is very important that we also elevate the voices of those who have suffered, like the Guillen family, but like countless others. Their stories are critically important, and they see this moment as a rare moment of opportunity to reform the U.S. military. And so, please, as you write your stories, as you interview folks, let's uphold and give voice to those voices, so many of whom have felt for years cries for help have gone unheard. And one last thing I do want to say, and in my comments to the Guillen family, I thanked them for elevating those voices. Although this is an incredible tragedy, a tragedy that as a mother I cannot even begin to imagine, it is a tragedy that will help us create historic change. So I'm very grateful, especially to Vanessa's mom and her sisters who have been relentless in their demands for justice. We absolutely stand with them today and going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Escobar. I'm now delighted to have join us another Republican colleague, Congressman Balderson. You don't? Okay. All right. Next, we'll hear from another colleague on the Military Personnel Subcommittee, Congressman Gil Cisneros.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Congressman Gil Cisneros. I represent California's 39th Congressional District, and I want to thank my colleague Jackie Spear for her tireless leadership and advocacy on this issue. I want to thank the Guillen family for being here today, for their courage and for their calls for change. As a member of Congress, we need to do more than just listen. I stand here today with my Democratic and Republican colleagues because we understand that Congress has a responsibility to act. And not just for Specialist Vanessa Guillen, but also for the countless other service members who have been sexually assaulted and harassed. Our men and women in uniform put their lives on the line to defend our country. Right now, our military leadership has fallen short in defending them. The murder of Specialist Guillen has shined a spotlight on the issue in our armed services that's been around for a long time. And I sit on the House Armed Services Committee, also as a member of the Military Personnel Subcommittee. We keep getting told by military leadership that they're working on this issue. These problems and these proposals they've initiated to address the systematic injustice needs time. They need more time and more time to work out, but nothing ever gets done. While these proposals are a step in the right direction, how much longer can our service members wait for change? It's beyond time that we make changes in our laws that get to the root of this toxic culture. Lives have been lost, families have been devastated. We must ensure our service members and military families have the peace of mind that they'll be heard and treated with respect and dignity. It's why I've joined my Republican and Democratic colleagues in introducing Am Vanessa Guillen Act. This bipartisan bill increases transparency and accountability by providing support and resources for our survivors in sexual assault and sexual harassment, and implementing a much-needed up-to-date to the military's response to missing service members. My colleagues and I are reaching across the aisle to make real change so that those who serve can count on us to protect their safety. I am also a Navy veteran, and when you have these young sailors, Marines, airmen, and soldiers serving under you, you are responsible for every part of their life, and we need to start making sure that our military, our senior leadership is acting for it. So we need Congress to act. I'm happy to hear that the Speaker is going to bring this to the floor. It can't come soon enough, but I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the Guillen family for your activism in leading on this. And we cannot, Vanessa, let her be died in vain. We need to remember those that are also calling out for help, and we need to make sure they have the voice to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman Cisneros. And finally, we're going to hear from Congressman Jason Crow, another member of the House Armed Services Committee.
Thank you, Jackie Spear, for your tireless advocacy and for leading the way in Congress on this issue, and Mark Wayne Mullen for joining forces and fighting, and to all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for stepping up to lead on this. My perspective of this issue is as a soldier and a veteran. My military career started as a private. And I remember going to basic training, stepping off that bus and being yelled at by the drill sergeant. And, throughout basic training, you learned what was important to the military. We spent countless hours learning marksmanship, learning the command structure. We even memorized the Army song. we learned all of the skills that were necessary to be a soldier. And the time spent was a direct reflection of the values and the culture of the military. The tone was set in those initial months of training. So that's why just a few months ago, when one of the top officials who oversees the Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Program came to testify before Congress, I asked him a simple question. I asked him, how much time is spent in basic training to prevent sexual assault, to prevent sexual harassment, and to set the tone that this is unacceptable in our military? And he could not answer the question. The military has failed. That is clear. You know, we have something in America, we have civilian control of the military. You know, it's Congress that decides what type of military our nation will have. So when the military fails, we will step in and we will fix it. That's why military sexual trauma ends with us. To the Guillen family, you have my prayers and you have my deepest sorrows. But fundamentally, we are all lawmakers and legislators. Our job is to pass laws, to make policy, and to protect our men and women in uniform. Our nation failed you. So we will move forward in your daughter's memory to fix it. Thank you.
I want to thank again all of my colleagues and the Guillen family for being here today. I can't begin to tell you what a transformative day this has become. The hundreds of thousands of men and women in the military that have been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed in their careers. And Congress has not acted. I want to give a special recognition to an organization that has been the voice for those men and women who have been abandoned. Its organization is called Protect Our Defenders. The president of that organization, Don Christensen, is here. Don Christensen, for most of his career, was an Air Force general counsel. He tried these cases. And as he retired, he realized that it wasn't working. So I say to the Guillen family, you have our promise that we are going to make sure that Vanessa's life has not been lost in vain. That you can proudly be reminded that her presence is going to be on every military base as it is transformed into an institution that protects our service members, men and women, who come to serve. They do not come to be assaulted and murdered by their colleagues. So God bless you. Thank you again for being here. Thank you all for joining us. We'll take a few questions. If you can stand the heat, yes.
Hi, did you know when is this bill gonna be brought to the floor? Do you have any timeline? And also, do you have the support of Democrats and Republicans, your other colleagues? How are you sensing that?
So I can tell you that the bill has now 73 co-sponsors, both Democrats and Republicans. We have a commitment from the Speaker of the House that the bill will come to the floor. If we can get 90 Republican members to join, in addition to those that have already been on the bill, we will be able to take it up under what's called a suspension rule. So that means it will come up even sooner. But before the end of this session, this is very remarkable to be able to introduce this bill today and have it taken up before the end of the session is just quite remarkable. So it will be either in the next few weeks or it will be in November.
Congressman Mullen, you mentioned systemic issues in the military, in the Department of Defense. From looking at the bill, it looks like the Department of the Defense will be naming this independent investigator. Is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. But it takes it out of the chain of command. What the most important thing about this bill is that we take it out of them investigating themselves. We put special prosecutors that are trained in this, and they will report directly to the DepSec. So it's still inside DOD, but DOD has a history of prosecuting and their own ways, and so we don't want to remove that. We want to keep it inside there because this did happen while they're in the service and they're in uniform. But it moves it, as I said, away from them investigating themselves. It's the right way to do it. And I want to go back to about the about bringing it to the floor. The speaker obviously controls the floor. She can bring it to the floor at any time. I really think when this thing comes to the floor, we're going to have overwhelming support of bipartisan support. It's going to be very difficult for anybody to vote against this. And even the president, when Vanessa's family got to meet with the president, he was very receptive. I was talking to her father yesterday, and he was just moved the idea that he got to meet with the president. And the president has voiced his support too. Of course, he hasn't seen the bill yet, but he is committed to helping Vanessa's family as much as they can. So this has great bipartisan support from President Trump to even Speaker Pelosi.
I was hoping you could clarify one other thing in the bill
Sure.
text. It looked like it says 2 years from enactment of this legislation, the independent investigations begin. Is that true?
That's correct.
Yes.
So you mentioned these thousands of cases each year. What happens between now and 2 years from now?
Well, in any piece of legislation, it takes a period for it to be staffed up. So that's going to be taking place during that course of time. The investigations are going to be independent, and so is the chief prosecutor, who will make a determination whether or not a court-martial should be pursued. Now, that doesn't prevent a commander from bringing a summary courts-martial if the independent chief prosecutor decides not to pursue the case. So it's just the process of standing it up. In the meantime, my hope is that the military is going to recognize that things are changing and take these cases much more seriously.
And the most important thing too is, Congresswoman Spear said, is it takes time. These prosecutors are going to be trained, and this is what they're going to do. So we want to make sure we have the best staff moving forward, because when we roll it out, we want to get it right, and that's so important.
Yes.
It's very rare to see Republicans and Democrats together these days.
It shouldn't be rare, but yes, it is rare.
Why do you think it's taken so long for something like this to really have momentum behind it, and why did it take something like Vanessa Guillen's death for that?
It pains me to say it's taken 10 years, but when I first started working this issue, no one even knew about it, and there were excuses made within the military that, well, it's because of alcohol, it's because of provocative attire, and it was swept under the rug. So for the longest time, the military was successful at suggesting that somehow if you were challenging their chain of command, their ability to hold everyone accountable, that was somehow unpatriotic. What is unpatriotic is the fact that we have a dead young service member who didn't have faith in a system. And I think over the years, as we have focused on this issue, spent so much money on this issue, and recognized nothing has really changed, the fact that the military brass would come to the Armed Services Committee and say they have a zero tolerance for sexual assault and sexual harassment started to not ring true.
I'll add one thing to that. The policy's always been right. It's the timing. You've been on the Hill long enough. You know that we see some good policy out there, but the timing has to be moved. And unfortunately, it took Vanessa's death to make that timing right. All of us have families, and it became very personal to us. And so while the policy's been there, the timing wasn't correct until now, and this is the right time to strike with it.
All right, any other questions? Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, too.
All right, we're gonna Oh, well, I mean... Gloria would like to say a few words. If you would all step back for a moment. All right.
I'll be fast. Hi, as many as y'all know, I'm Vanessa's youngest sister, Lupe Guillen, and next to me is my precious mother, Gloria Guillen. And today, we're not only here for Vanessa, we're here to save lives. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lupe Guillen, and I am Vanessa's youngest sister and her voice for the past 5 months. The I Am Vanessa Guillen movement, which made us all realize the truth and the horrifying fact in the armed forces that has happened now. At the time that I'm speaking today and every day, and now it has to be put us to a stop. We're suffering a crisis of sexual harassment and assault in the U.S. Army. And not to say Fort Hood having the highest sexual violence and having one of the largest military bases, but nothing justifies what is being done to innocent people like Vanessa, like Elder, and all those survivors of sexual violence, who all they want is to serve and protect the nation, because that is what those soldiers sign up for, just like Vanessa Guillen signed up for, since her dream was at the age of 10, following along that those same people are human beings. Everyone deserves respect, especially those who give their life for us, those who fight for us. Vanessa Guillen fought for us, and now it's time to fight for her. Vanessa Guillen and the armed forces community are more than just someone who's wearing a uniform. These people have a story to tell. Those stories are not simple hashtag like the I Am Vanessa Guillen hashtag. These stories are actual people, and it involves life, their respect, fear, and death. Those stories are happening here in our military bases, here in the United States. Vanessa, like many others, have a story to tell, but yet, who did they tell? No one. No one, because they have no one to turn to. No one, because no one hears them out. No one, because it seems like no one cares, because there hasn't been a change. But I care. My family cares. Congresswoman Spears cares. Congresswoman Williams cares. And Congress cares. And the change is now. Vanessa Guillen, a 20-year-old whose dreams were to attend school while serving the military, to start a family, to be successful, were ripped away disgustedly. Vanessa Guillen experienced sexual harassment excessively while serving and being stationed in Fort Hood, Texas. Vanessa vivid sexual violence verbally, non-verbally, and physically in multiple occasions with multiple different people. Vanessa did not report her sexual harassment because of witnessing other female and male soldiers being ignored and no accountability being done. Seeing that the soldiers were not being safe and respected, even those who did report it, yet again, nothing has been done over and over again. In the military, 1 to 2 of 3 women get abused and raped, and no action being taken care of. Sexual harassment increased every year, and yet nothing's being done. There is no system of response, prevention, and accountability in the military. The U.S. Army, believe it or not, and I say this today, tolerates sexual harassment, assault, abuse, and rape. Those who are target of sexual violence are 18 through 25 years old, junior leadership rank, and new enlistments, just like Vanessa. We need to address sexual violence by holding those accountable of their actions, because what I remember, God gave us a life and a brain to good. And to think about what we do, we need to hold those aggressors accountable and let the victim file a lawsuit to get justice and accountability. It is unacceptable how the U.S. Army, Secretary McCarthy, and head of CID, Donna Martin, keep lying day after day about my sister, Vanessa Guillen. See those soldiers as objects and numbers. It's disgusting how a part of an armor goes missing, and they do everything to find it. But when it comes to a life like Vanessa's, they do nothing. A life is more valuable than an object. Life happens once, and there's no going back. Because I know everything that I do today will not return my sister, but it will save lives. So many questions I ask myself every night before going to sleep. And yet, none of them are answered. How can we trust those who's supposed to protect us if the U.S. Army cannot protect their own? How many more must die for the system that has been broken to be changed? How many more must suffer and go through a nightmare of sexual violence? For Congress, the Senate, and the President to realize we need the Am Vanessa Guillen bill to pass. How many more must die for her to be investigated and held accountable? How many more days do I have to go without sleep and screaming for justice? Because it does not matter if I lose my voice screaming, because I'm doing this for Vanessa and for the survivors of sexual violence. And to investigate what happened to my sister Vanessa Guillen. Why harm and ripped an innocent person's life away from me, from her family, and from her bright future? So many questions in those 5 months. So many supposedly investigations by CFD, and yet nothing. Not a day goes by that I don't think about Vanessa and how her death could have been prevented. And then I see Congresswoman Jackie Spears working for 10 years. I see myself working for 5 months. And how this bill could have been prevented Vanessa's death. Because the Am Vanessa Guillen bill will save lives. We may and have to protect our protectors. We must be the voice to the voiceless, be the help to the helpless, and be the power to empower others to share their stories, and be the change to help others like Vanessa. Because as Natalie Quam said, this is not a Republican or Democratic issue, not a race issue, not a male or female issue. This is a human issue, so it should be everyone's issue, because humanity and a life should not be up to debate. A life shouldn't come as far to go and debate it in Congress to vote yes or no on the Am Vanessa Guillen bill. We all have a voice, so let's use it for a positive change. Because of a life of a human being is not to be seen as a sexual object. A life is more valuable than a weapon. A life will be taken away, but will never come back. And I am Lupe Guillen, and I will not stop until the truth comes out in my sister's disappearance and murder. Which divine mercy, it will come out, like it or not. I will not stop speaking, fighting, screaming, until the real criminals are behind bars. And I promise you, Vanessa, and those survivors, and those active duty soldiers that are suffering from sexual harassment and assault, I will not stop, because we are family. And family sticks together no matter what. And we will win this battle together. Congress, the Senate, Republicans, Democrats, no matter the race, the sexuality. And we demand justice for Vanessa Guillen.